I bought a rotting house on forgotten land to rebuild my life. But just when it stood tall again, the HOA queen next door had it demolished, without warning. She vanished across state lines. What she didn't know? I had a camera, a cop for a friend, and zero intention of letting it slide. When I first pulled up to the house, I could practically hear the structure wheezing. The roof looked like it was being held up by sheer stubbornness. Ivy had colonized half the siding, and something definitely died under the porch, maybe more than once. And yet, I smiled. This was it, my new beginning. I'd found the listing by accident while doom-scrolling one night in a motel room outside Charlotte, trying to convince myself I hadn't just blown up my life on a whim. Divorce finalized, job quit, condo sold. All I had left was my dog, a battered pickup truck, and the audacity to think I could start over in my 40s by rebuilding a crumbling house in the middle of nowhere. The price was suspiciously low enough to make a man either run or jump in head first. I jumped. The house sat on the edge of a small town called Hayfield Springs, not even on the GPS unless you zoomed in far enough to count potholes. It was technically outside the HOA-controlled development known as Silver Lake, which everyone described with the kind of tight-lipped reverence usually reserved for cults or country clubs. Fine by me. I wasn't looking for pool regulations and passive-aggressive newsletters. I wanted quiet, privacy, and something I could build with my own hands. The deed was clean. The land was mine. And the house, well, it had good bones if those bones were currently screaming in structural agony. I parked my camper in the back, rigged up a temporary power source, and made the place livable enough to avoid tetanus with every step. I named the project Rebuild from Rubble and started filming everything for my YouTube channel. I didn't expect it to take off. Turns out people love watching grown men fight black mold and lose. Neighbors came by in waves. The curious, the nosy, the accidentally walking their dog past for the 7th day in a row types. Most were friendly, in that fake syrup southern way where everyone calls you Hon while side-eyeing your plywood toilet. One brought cookies. Another, a retired handyman, offered advice I didn't ask for and tools I definitely needed. And then there was her. She appeared on a Tuesday afternoon unannounced like a tax audit or a kidney stone. White Lexus, perfectly ironed blouse, blonde bob that looked like it cost more than my truck. She stepped out with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello. I'm Karen Bramholtz, president of the Silver Lake Homeowners Association. You must be the new occupant of this property." There was a pause where the word property hung in the air like a bad smell. I wiped concrete dust off my hands and nodded. "That's right. Name's Leon. House isn't in Silver Lake, though. This parcel is independent." Karen chuckled politely. "Oh, I know. But you're adjacent, which means we have a vested interest in your curb appeal. Silver Lake prides itself on visual continuity." "Visual continuity," I repeated. "Well, don't worry. Once I rebuild this place, it'll be the prettiest haunted house on the block." She didn't laugh. She made a note on her clipboard. "I just thought I'd drop by and offer a welcome packet," she said, handing me a glossy folder. "We'd love to include you in our community. There are standards, expectations, and shared values that really elevate property value around here." I thumbed through it. Pages of color swatches, mailbox regulations, and aerial maps. It was like someone tried to turn Stepford into a PowerPoint. "I'm not in the HOA," I said, handing it back. No offense, but that was part of the appeal. Karen's smile thinned, then re-solidified. "Well, if you ever change your mind, some homeowners adjacent to the zone have opted in voluntarily. We're very inclusive, up to a point." That last bit sounded friendly in the way a mobster sounds friendly when they say, "Nice place. Shame if something happened to it." I gave her a polite nod and turned back to my work. She lingered a moment, scanning the facade like a real estate agent scouting a teardown. Then she left, tires crunching gravel with surgical precision. That night, I joked to my followers that I'd just met the queen of the Karens. I figured she'd go back to policing lawn heights and letting Amazon drivers know their bumper stickers were offensive. But she came back 3 more times in the next 2 weeks. Each time it was a different angle. First it was trash pickup schedules. Then it was how the reflective tarp I used violated community aesthetics. Finally, she suggested I consider selling before the renovation devalues surrounding homes. It was always wrapped in silk, but the dagger underneath wasn't subtle. I stopped being polite after the 3rd visit. Not rude, just cold enough to make her smile twitch. By week 4, I started noticing things. A car idling too long outside my fence line. HOA newsletters addressed to resident of Lot 48. A lot number that didn't exist on my deed. Notes tucked under my windshield about code violations with no agency listed. Always unsigned, always typed. Then came the call from the county office. "Hey, Mr. Walker, just confirming, did you authorize a zoning reclassification for your property into Silver Lake HOA jurisdiction?" I nearly dropped my coffee. "What? No. Who filed that?" There was a pause. "Application came in with your name, signature, and a notarized consent form. But the notary's stamp is, let's say, suspicious." I stared at the phone like it was about to explode. Someone was trying to rewrite the map under my feet. I drove straight to the municipal building and requested every document they had on file. It took half a day and 3 Diet Cokes to sort through it, but eventually the clerk handed me a thin folder. Inside was a forged signature, a fake notary, and a zoning map that now labeled my land as pending absorption, Silver Lake HOA. Pending absorption. Like I was some tumor they were prepping for removal. I copied everything, drove home, locked my gate, and installed 2 security cameras. My channel audience exploded when I posted the video titled, "HOA tries to claim my land with forged docs." Comments flooded in. Legal advice, threats, and stories of similar battles across the country. I started hearing from real estate watchdog groups, even a local reporter. Karen didn't come back for a while, but her silence felt less like retreat and more like calibration. Something told me she hadn't given up. She was just switching tactics. I wish I could say things cooled down after that, but they didn't. They got quieter, which was worse. It started small, subtle, almost elegant in a petty kind of way. One morning I came out to find my no trespassing signs covered by handwritten flyers, laminated, hole-punched, zip-tied, that read, "Help keep Hayfield beautiful. Report violations today," with a hotline number that led straight to the Silver Lake HOA. The flyers weren't taped over mine. They were placed on top, carefully, like someone wanted to send a message without leaving fingerprints. Then came the volunteer visits. I counted 5 different HOA members who just happened to be passing by while I was working. They always opened with a smile and a comment on how brave I was to take on such a project. Then they'd pivot to questions about zoning, permits, fire codes, roofing materials, each laced with that tone people use when they pretend they don't think you're an idiot. One woman even offered to give me a tour of a few homes in the association that might inspire your renovation choices. I declined, politely. She left me a glossy HOA-style guide anyway, slipped under my door like propaganda from a suburban Cold War. I kept my cool. I documented everything. My cameras caught 2 of them walking around the back of my property. One even leaned over my fence with a tape measure. I filed a trespassing report with the sheriff. He sighed when I showed him the footage. "Silver Lake again?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "I've had calls about them harassing the guy with the Airstream and that teacher on Hollow Bend. Same tactics. They test the fence line, see if you'll fold." "I won't," I told him. "I believe you," he said. "Just keep your head down. Karen plays chess, not checkers." That line stuck with me. She wasn't gone. She was watching, repositioning her pieces. Then things escalated. My mailbox was stuffed with HOA violation notices, despite the fact that, again, I wasn't a member. They looked official. Embossed letterhead, fine print, even a QR code that linked to a HOA portal with my address now listed under new construction, Phase 3. According to them, I was building a home without board approval and owed assessed fees totaling over $11,000. I called the number listed on the letter. "Silver Lake Association, this is Michelle." "Hi, Michelle, this is Leon Walker. I got a notice about assessed fees and—" "Oh, Mr. Walker," she said immediately like I was irregular. "Yes, that would be regarding your outstanding compliance registration and modification approvals. I see a few charges pending. Looks like debris on the front lawn, non-standard fencing, and power generator sound violations." "That's my portable solar trailer," I snapped. "And this is private land. I'm not part of Silver Lake." She paused. "According to our records, your parcel is listed under Phase 3 integration. It was mapped for annexation last quarter. You were notified via certified mail." "No, I wasn't," I said flatly, "because I would have noticed someone trying to steal my property on paper." "Sir, I'm afraid that's something you'll have to take up with our legal team. Would you like the number?" I hung up. I spent that afternoon at the county registrar's office. Again. This time the clerk, same one from before, didn't even look surprised. "Sir, I'd recommend getting a lawyer," he said. "This HOA's been trying to get control of that ridge for a while. You're not the first one they've tried to rope in with friendly annexation." "You mean fraud?" He gave me a careful look. "Off the record?" "Yeah. But they've got friends in city planning. They know how to push things through quietly." That night, someone posted a thread about me in the Hayfield Springs Community Facebook group. I wasn't tagged and I had no account, but a friend sent me screenshots. It was written like a neighborhood PSA. "Just a reminder to all Silver Lake residents. If you see construction debris, loose materials, or suspicious activity near the ridgeline lot, please report it. We're working to keep the area safe and up to code as we move toward Phase 3 integration. Let's work together to prevent squatter setups and protect our property values." Squatter. Squatter. I laughed out loud when I read that. Not because it was funny, but because it was so brazen. These people weren't even pretending anymore. They were trying to erase my ownership socially before they tried again legally. The comments were worse. "I saw his dog off-leash near the trail. That house is a safety hazard. I think he's running some kind of off-grid YouTube grift." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My subscribers did it for me. Within a day, the comment section was flooded with screenshots, legal citations, and very creative memes involving HOA boards and medieval witch trials. One even photoshopped Karen's face onto a Roman emperor, complete with laurel wreath and HOA decree in hand. But the pressure was getting to me. I could feel it in my gut. Because behind the jokes, behind the accidental visits and the bogus fines was something colder. Coordinated, strategic. Karen wasn't just annoyed that I didn't want to match her shutters. She was clearing the board, and I was the last piece on it. The morning it happened started with birdsong and ended with rubble. I had left town for the weekend, just 2 days. A panel invite at a small creator convention in Asheville. My first live event as the guy rebuilding the war zone house. I brought my laptop, prepped a short talk, packed some fresh flannel, and told myself it was time to enjoy a win. Subscriber count had just hit 300,000. My dog, Radar, was with a neighbor I trusted. Cameras were on, tools locked up, house secured. I came back to a crater. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean I pulled off the gravel road onto my lot and saw nothing. No porch, no tarp, no frame. Just broken foundation, tire tracks, and a half-buried danger construction site sign swinging in the wind. For several seconds, I didn't get out of the truck. My brain couldn't compute it. I kept blinking like the house would pop back into existence if I reset my eyes hard enough. But it was gone. Everything I'd rebuilt over the last 9 months, floors, wiring, support beams, handmade shutters, even the goofy wooden bench I carved from a fallen tree, all gone, pulverized, erased. I got out slowly, stepping over broken bricks and splintered lumber. Part of my workbench was still intact, the one I'd reinforced with repurposed railroad ties. That thing had survived 2 hurricanes. It didn't survive this. I checked the cameras first. Gone. Torn off the mounts. The mounts themselves were bent like pretzels. I found one lens buried in the dirt. Phone out. Dialed 911. The dispatcher asked me to repeat myself twice. Yes, I'm standing on my property and it's gone. Demolished, flattened. I did not authorize this. No, I wasn't served anything. No, it's not abandoned. I live here. I have footage. I had footage. I have proof it was mine. 2 squad cars showed up within 20 minutes. One of the officers was someone I knew, Detective Jonathan Reese, an old college buddy who'd moved back home to take a position at the county sheriff's department. "Leon?" he asked, squinting through sunglasses. "What the hell happened here?" "Wish I knew," I said, gesturing to the void. "Came back and found my life mulched." The other officer walked the perimeter while Jonathan took statements. I showed him photos, video backups from the cloud, and my deed. He listened silently, eyes narrowing as I pointed to the demolition sign and the tire tracks leading back to the access road. Then I handed him the kicker, a blurry photo a neighbor had texted me while I was away, taken the morning before. It showed a crew in orange vests operating machinery. In the background, Karen, clipboard in hand, watching, smiling. Jonathan let out a low whistle. Jesus, this wasn't subtle. I shook my head. This wasn't a mistake. We called the county building department. No demolition permit had been filed for my address. None. Not for my name. Not for my parcel. Not even under the fake HOA lot number they'd been trying to assign me. So where had the crew come from? I posted the photo online with a caption. They demolished my house, without notice, without permit, while I was gone. Within hours, the image was everywhere. By nightfall, the post had over 600,000 views and made the front page of Reddit. A dozen lawyers offered to represent me pro bono. Even a former federal prosecutor slid into my DMs, but Karen, she vanished. Gone. Poof. Her Lexus wasn't at her house. The blinds were drawn. The HOA office was locked. Closed for administrative reorganization. The woman who used to leave flyers in my mailbox like clockwork suddenly evaporated like a fart in a wind tunnel. Jonathan did some digging. The demolition company listed on the sign, Brentco Deconstruction. Didn't exist, at least not locally. No business license, no contracts with the county. The phone number rang to a voicemail with no greeting. Their online presence? A half-finished Wix page and a generic Gmail. It was a shell company. Someone had thrown together a fake demo crew, hired contractors from out of state, and sold them on a forged permit, likely using my name. The address on the order matched mine. The name listed under Site Supervisor, K. Bramholtz. Jonathan looked up from the report and said, "She's running this like a damn operation." Because it is an operation, I said. I'm not the first house they tried to grab. I'm just the first one with an audience. We drove to her listed address. Nothing. We checked HOA meeting minutes. Deleted. We requested bank records from the association. Red flags everywhere. Odd withdrawals, payments to companies with no paper trail. And one sizable check labeled Phase 3 Redevelopment Fund. Signed a week before the demo. I can escalate this, Jonathan said, already on the phone with the district office. We've got criminal mischief, property destruction, fraud, possibly conspiracy, but if she's crossed state lines, she's not getting far, I said. Because I had something she didn't count on. Visibility. I went live that night. Just me. Sitting on the hood of my truck. Behind me, the ghost of a house. I told the story step by step. Every visit, every warning, every shady notice, flyer, and threat. I named names, Karen's name, I asked for help, and I got it. Within 12 hours, tips started pouring in. A sighting at a hotel in Georgia. A car matching hers spotted at a rest stop in Alabama. A credit card transaction flagged in a boutique spa, under a different name, but with the same license plate in the parking lot. Karen wasn't just hiding. She was running. Karen had always dressed like she paid cash for judgment. Tailored blazers, pearl earrings, nails too perfect for gardening. She seemed like the kind of woman who'd sue a squirrel for shedding in her hydrangeas. But now, she was officially a fugitive. Jonathan worked the case like a man possessed. I think deep down, he took it personally. Not just because we were friends, but because this wasn't petty vandalism. This was methodical, planned property theft under the cover of bureaucracy. The HOA wasn't just a meddlesome nuisance. It was a front. He pulled favor after favor, roping in county investigators, state auditors, and eventually the North Carolina Attorney General's office. Turns out, when you demolish a house illegally and try to fold the land into a housing development via fake permits, the government starts to pay attention. While they worked the legal angles, I started digging on my own. I knew Karen had connections. The fake company, the forged notary documents, the zoning map edits. None of that gets past basic checks unless someone inside helps it slide through. I combed through old HOA newsletters, financial filings, and archived website snapshots. It didn't take long to find the name Evermark Properties. It was listed on a few thank you pages, mentioned as a strategic partner in future expansion projects. Seemed like a bland suburban development firm, until I realized it was run by David Bramholtz, Karen's ex-husband, or technically estranged business partner, as she liked to put it in interviews. Evermark had a reputation for swallowing lots. Not literally, they weren't a demolition company. They were a conversion machine. They lobbied local HOAs to change boundaries, rezone problem properties, then either strong-arm owners into compliance or quietly buy them out under threat of legal action. A paper trail of voluntary integration led to Evermark acquiring dozens of parcels over 5 years, often through a friendly HOA consultant who just happened to be Karen. My property wasn't an eyesore to them. It was a missing puzzle piece. The last lot they needed to connect the eastern ridge to a larger development permit request. Without my parcel, Evermark couldn't legally build the through road their next phase required. Suddenly, the harassment made sense. The flyers, the violation notices, the Facebook whisper campaigns. All of it was part of a coordinated push to scare me off, box me in, or discredit me enough to get a court order declaring the structure unsafe, which would have given them legal grounds to demolish. But I didn't leave, so they jumped the gun. Meanwhile, Karen kept slipping away. The Georgia tip checked out. She'd stayed 2 nights at a high-end wellness retreat under the name Catherine Holtzman. Paid in cash, left no forwarding address. Her Lexus was found abandoned in South Carolina, plates swapped. Either she was panicking or she'd planned this getaway in advance. Honestly, knowing her, probably both. Jonathan finally got a hit when facial recognition software pinged her at an airport security camera in Savannah. She was traveling light, no checked bags, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses like she thought she was in a Bond movie. She used a fake ID, but the TSA pulled her aside. The name didn't match the database. She bailed before they could detain her. That was the break we needed. Within 48 hours, the AG's office issued a statewide warrant for dishonest fraud, conspiracy to commit property theft, impersonating a public official, and destruction of private property. The judge didn't just sign the order. He called it a civil terrorism case using the shell of suburban governance to extort and displace homeowners. It wasn't just about me anymore. News broke like wildfire. Local outlets covered the raid on the HOA office, where investigators seized hard drives, signed blank permits, even a list of priority acquisition targets. My name was at the top. Neighbors came forward, finally. A couple down the street confessed they'd sold under pressure after Karen threatened to fine them for unauthorized garden structures. One man admitted she told him his mixed-race tenants were causing discomfort in the community, and if he didn't sell, the HOA would make things difficult. It was the same story over and over again. Control through intimidation, policy as a weapon, and beneath it all, land grabs disguised as community improvement. The house she destroyed? That was supposed to be the final move. She didn't count on the fact that I had an audience, or that I'd fight back. While Karen played fugitive Barbie across state lines, I went public again. This time, with a full expose video. How my HOA president tried to steal my land, and what I found next. I walked through every step, documents, maps, timestamps. I included witness statements, contractor invoices, and even a side-by-side breakdown of the fake permit and a real one. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was telling everyone's. The video hit over 1 million views in a weekend. NBC called, then CNN, then some suit from Netflix who wanted to discuss documentary options. I ignored most of it. I wasn't trying to go Hollywood. I wanted a reckoning. And then it came, at 6:30 in the morning on a quiet street outside a furnished rental house in Tallahassee, Florida. Karen Bramholtz was arrested while taking out the recycling and tennis shoes in a full cashmere set. They found 5 burner phones, 2 fake passports, $24,000 in cash, and, I shit you not, a miniature shredder packed into a suitcase. Like she thought she could Ocean's 11 her way out of felony charges with a paper jam and a good moisturizer. Jonathan called me the second it happened. "We got her," he said, voice sharp with satisfaction. And I just stood there, staring at my ruined lot, now taped off as a crime scene, feeling the first hint of peace I'd felt in months. She ran, but she didn't get away. They brought her in wearing a designer hoodie, oversized sunglasses, and a look of utter disbelief, like someone had just canceled her country club membership mid-lunch. Mugshot caught her in that exact moment, mouth slightly open, eyes squinting in confusion, still trying to process how a man she called a squatter had just taken down her entire kingdom. Karen Bramholtz was booked on 6 felony counts and on 3 misdemeanors, including fraud, criminal conspiracy, unauthorized demolition, identity theft, destruction of private property, and evading arrest. Her bail was set at $1 million, and no one from Silver Lake showed up to pay it. The initial hearing was short and savage. The state attorney laid out the basics: forged documents, false HOA expansions, shell companies registered in her name, and fake notarized consents used to bulldoze properties without due process. My house was just the loudest mistake. Turns out she'd pulled this stunt before, only quieter, without camera crews and YouTube fan bases breathing down her neck. Karen's court-appointed attorney tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding regarding jurisdictional overlaps in a community management context. The judge shut that down before the guy finished the sentence. "This isn't about zoning confusion," the judge said. "This is a hostile takeover masquerading as suburban administration." I was sitting in the second row behind the prosecution. Jonathan next to me, arms folded, face unreadable. When the judge ordered Karen to remain in custody until trial, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled, slowly, finally. The fallout back home was nuclear. Silver Lake HOA collapsed like a flan in a microwave. Emergency board meetings were called. Their vice president, a guy named Martin Crenshaw, resigned live on Zoom after someone leaked an audio recording of Karen threatening to ruin his mortgage if he ever disagreed with her. The HOA office was sealed off, records seized, and a full audit launched by the state. Turns out their development fund was an embezzlement buffet. Fake maintenance invoices, consulting fees to Evermark properties, and even monthly land restoration stipends being routed to a ghost company in Delaware. All traced back to accounts Karen controlled. It was a whole damn criminal enterprise wrapped in picket fences and pastel siding. Local news stations swarmed. I did 3 interviews in one day. Then I stopped. I didn't want to become a character in someone else's story. I was already exhausted. But the narrative had taken on a life of its own. They dubbed it the suburb scam. Some online channels called it the HOA heist. My personal favorite came from a TikTok creator who labeled Karen the HOA warlord. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't satisfaction in seeing her dragged into the light. But more than that, there was anger. Deep, slow-burning, ice-cold fury. Because my house was gone. The sweat, the months of rebuilding, the money I sunk into it, the hours of labor, editing, scaffolding, the time I spent just standing in the frame of that house imagining what it would be like when it was finally finished. Gone. Leveled. Because someone wanted a through road. I filed my civil suit the same week Karen was indicted. My lawyer, a sharp former real estate prosecutor named Felicia Navarro, hit them with everything. Destruction of private property, emotional distress, malicious intent, fraud, forgery, illegal annexation attempts. We demanded $3 million in damages based on the cost of the home, projected rental and brand income, emotional impact, and punitive restitution. Evermark Properties. We sued them too. Their lawyers tried to distance the company, claiming Karen had acted independently and without oversight. Felicia tore through that in minutes. The payment records alone were enough to show Evermark not only knew what Karen was doing, but funded it. The judge consolidated both cases into a single trial, citing unprecedented overlap of fraud, abuse of legal mechanisms, and public interest. And public interest? Oh, it was everywhere. I got letters from other states. Veterans, single moms, elderly couples, all sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some were funny, some were tragic. One guy wrote that he lost his family home after an HOA fined him into foreclosure for putting up solar panels. That's when I realized it wasn't just about me anymore. I'd become a symbol, not of revenge, but of resistance, of standing your ground against corporate suburban tyranny. The HOA system, once built for community, had turned into a weapon for control. And Karen? She was the perfect face for it. Manicured, manipulative, and always just one forged document away from empire building. While we prepared for court, more pieces kept falling into place. A whistleblower from the HOA, Cheryl Watkins, former treasurer, came forward with internal emails. One of them, from Karen to the board, read, "We need that lot to complete the grid. If he won't sell, we force the issue. Clean slate, new member, fresh capital. Force the issue. I read that line 5 times. This wasn't about aesthetics. It wasn't about community cohesion or property values. It was about control through demolition. And I was supposed to be the final obstacle in a spreadsheet somewhere. Another checkbox. They never expected me to fight. They never expected me to win the public. And they sure as hell didn't expect the receipts. The courtroom didn't look like justice. It looked like a DMV with better lighting. Beige walls, plastic chairs, microphones that cut in and out. But when the bailiff called my name, I stood like I was walking into the Coliseum. Karen was already there, seated across the aisle at the defense table in a tan blazer 2 sizes too big. The woman who once ruled HOA meetings like a queen at court now looked like someone waiting to be sentenced for tax fraud, which, to be fair, was probably coming next. Her lawyer, a pinched man with the voice of a dying thermostat, tried to open with a plea for leniency. My client believed she was acting in the best interest of her community, he said. This was a miscommunication between property lines and jurisdictional misunderstanding. My attorney, Felicia Navarro, didn't even blink. Your client forged signatures, falsified permits, and hired an unlicensed demolition crew. She also evaded arrest for 16 days using stolen identities. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a hostile act of real estate piracy. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a gavel she clearly enjoyed using, nodded once. Proceed. What followed was a masterclass in legal dismantling. Felicia presented everything. Drone footage of the property before demolition, screenshots of the HOA's fake notices, email chains from Cheryl Watkins showing Karen planning the annexation campaign, financial records linking Karen to Evermark Properties and the demolition shell company. Brent Co. Deconstruction, which, as it turned out, had been registered by a former Evermark intern 6 weeks prior. I sat through it all in silence, my face neutral, letting the avalanche of evidence bury her alive. Karen tried to act unfazed. Occasionally she whispered to her lawyer, sometimes scribbled notes, once even rolled her eyes dramatically during testimony. But by the 3rd day, the cracks showed, her lipstick faded, her bun drooped, her notes got sloppier. The media called her the HOA queen without a kingdom. The best moment? When Felicia played the courtroom a voicemail Karen accidentally left on Cheryl's phone. A hot mic moment where Karen clearly said, "He thinks the land gives him power. He doesn't understand we already own the board. The house is just a pawn. If he won't play nice, we'll wipe the board clean." You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Even the judge looked impressed. "Is this confirmed?" she asked. "It's been forensically authenticated, Your Honor," Felicia replied. Karen's lawyer objected. Overruled. The tape was entered into evidence. Just like that, intent became undeniable. On the 4th day, the defense rested. They didn't have much to rest on. Karen didn't testify. Probably smart. She had too many versions of her story floating around already. Her lawyer tried to pivot toward mental fatigue and postmenopausal disorientation, which made the jury visibly recoil. It was like watching someone pour gasoline on their own car. The jury deliberated for just under 5 hours. They came back with a verdict on all counts. Guilty. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of criminal conspiracy. Guilty of destruction of private property. Guilty of impersonating a public official. Guilty of misappropriation of funds. Guilty of unauthorized demolition. In the civil suit, the jury awarded me $3 million homeowners, every penny we asked for, plus legal fees and additional damages for targeted harassment under false governmental authority. The moment the verdict was read, Karen didn't move. She just stared at the desk in front of her, hands folded, jaw clenched. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder. She shrugged it off. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at her, at the woman who thought she could steal my life and vanish into another state like it was some kind of real estate video game, and nodded once. Not in forgiveness, not even in satisfaction, just in confirmation. You picked the wrong pawn, lady. The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. Sentencing would come later, but the message was already sent. Karen Bramholtz, once the iron-fisted president of the Silver Lake HOA, had been legally and publicly dismantled. Outside the courthouse, press swarmed. I gave one statement. I didn't start this war, I just refused to lose it. The crowd erupted. That night I drove back to my lot, the one she tried to erase. The sun was setting behind the hills, and for the first time in months it didn't feel like I was standing in ruins. It felt like I was standing on a clean slate. 6 months later, my new house stands taller than the last one ever did. 2 stories, solar-paneled, wraparound porch. Same footprint, but with stronger bones and fireproof siding. I designed every inch of it myself, from the reinforced foundation to the reading nook I carved into the front bay window. The locals call it the fortress. I call it justice framed and nailed down. I didn't use a dime of the $3 million for the rebuild. I put that in a fund for legal aid and land defense, small-town homeowners fighting back against overreaching HOAs. We called it Stay Put. My subscribers tripled. A few even sent in blueprints, drawings, and their own horror stories. One woman in Arizona used our legal template to stop her HOA from seizing her greenhouse. Another guy in Oregon now sells bumper stickers that say, "Not today, HOA." Felicia went national. She's on panels now, writing a book. Tyranny on Turf, when HOAs go rogue. I'm in chapter 8, apparently. The demolition man who demolished back. And Karen? She's still behind bars, waiting out her sentence in a low-security federal facility for white-collar criminals. Word is she's leading a petition to establish a behavioral standards committee in the inmate rec room. You really can't turn that part off, I guess. Jonathan visits sometimes. He's got a new title now, Deputy Director of County Investigations. He helped unravel 3 more HOA schemes statewide. We grab beers on the porch, the same one that used to be ash and cement. He always brings the good chips. The Silver Lake HOA dissolved. Their entire board resigned. The properties they tried to annex were legally unlinked, zoning maps restored, and the HOA bylaws are now pinned to a local bar's dartboard. Bullseye on Karen's signature. As for me, I still film, still build. The new channel's called Reclaimed Ground. I teach people how to fight back, how to document, how to own your dirt with teeth. I started turning leftover lumber from the original house into furniture. Each piece is branded with a symbol, a rook chess piece, unmovable. Last week something funny happened. I got a letter, typed, glossy envelope. No return address, just the words. Dear Mr. Walker, we'd like to invite you to consider joining the South Pine Residential Association. I laughed so hard I choked on my sandwich. I framed it, hung it right next to the demolition order that nearly ruined my life, and every time I walk past it I nod and whisper, "Not today, Karen."